We ended up flying from Malaysia to San Francisco, and I think it was December, either December or January, when we left. And so super hot tropics, and then landing in San Francisco. And I think that first night we didn't have jackets or anything like that, but thankfully the Red Cross in San Francisco had jackets and had some items for us that helped us not freeze that first night. My mom told me that when we arrived, they gave everybody a box of KFC, even the kids. The kids got their own box, and so I think it had 2 pieces of chicken, and so being the diligent Vietnamese people, like, everybody ate one and saved the other one, because who knows when you're going to get to eat again, right? But we spent the night in, they took you from the airport to dorms, and then, at that point you were free to walk around. We were flying out the next day to Louisiana, Baton Rouge. My dad left the dorm, walked around, walked into a store, and was able to ask somebody to use their phone. I don't think he even knew that long distance cost money. And so he made a phone call to my uncle to let everybody know that we had arrived, and that we would be able to meet them in Baton Rouge. And so we flew from San Francisco to Baton Rouge, where the rest of the family was. And so we stayed there, not long, I want to say about a month. And during that month is when my parents had to figure out, okay, are we going to go to school? Are we going to go to work? What are we going to do? And in that time, they found out that there was a chain of grocery stores that were letting immigrants work in them. And I think at that time it was called U-Totem, which is the predecessor to Circle K. We came to Houston, and they were able to work in this store. And it was really an amazing thing, because this company would assign a whole store to a family. And the store is open 24 hours. And so my mom would work the morning shift from like 6 to 3, and my uncle would work the shift from 3 to 11, and then my dad would work that night shift from 11 till 6 in the morning. This is how we lived. I think we lived this way for 6 or 8 years. And them just working 7 days a week, and if there were other shifts that were available, they would pick those shifts up and continue to work to try to make money, right? We had to pool the resources together so that they could move on to the next thing. And the next phase was that eventually they were able to buy their own store and then build other stores after that. But those first years were difficult, right? Because we were going to school, parents were working, there was nobody at home. And yeah, I think that, in the beginning, no furniture. We had a couple mattresses that were donated. And so I think for the first couple years, my parents had us sleep on those mattresses, and they slept on the floor. Until, at some point they were able to get their own mattresses to sleep on. And, it wasn't until much later that I realized that people slept on beds and not mattresses on the floor. And I think about all that time during those years, right? Because my kids are right in that period, that age now, during that time, where my dad was working and, just didn't see him at all. Never got to have dinner, never got to tuck the kids in bed or anything like that. I think it's pretty typical for me that everything would tie back to food. But I think that, we didn't really start as a family eating American food until I was in high school. So this was very, this was very key to my mom, right? Is eating Vietnamese food, or as much as she was able to make, and retaining our language, our culture. So like even at home, there were a lot of families that said, we're going to speak English only, right, as much as we can, because they were worried about their kids falling behind in school. They already were behind, right, but not being able to catch up. And my mom felt like if we lived here and we were immersed, that we would definitely learn the language. We would be able to learn English. But her concern was us losing the ability to speak Vietnamese, being able to eat Vietnamese food and appreciate Vietnamese culture. And so she was very adamant that we only spoke Vietnamese at home, that we ate Vietnamese food. And she was very much a drill sergeant in this way. I remember she made bitter melon. Bitter melon is it's like a gourd, looks like a cucumber with like warts on it, right? It's just very unappealing to look at in general, and it's even worse to taste, right? So it's really like bitter, strong flavor. And I was maybe 5 years old when they first started having it, and so my mom made it, and it made me sick, and I told my mom, hey, that made me sick, please don't make it anymore. And my mom said, yeah, don't worry about it. She went to the store and bought 10 pounds of it. And just every day, bitter melon, with eggs, bitter melon soup, stuffed bitter melon, everything, right, was bitter melon. And so she was very adamant about maintaining the culture and learning to appreciate this is who we are, this is what we eat. And I love it now. Culturally, it was all new to me. Had to learn the language. By the time I got to school though, I spoke English. I never had to do English second language. My two uncles that came with me, they had to take ESL, but I watched Sesame Street while they were at school, and I learned English watching Sesame Street. When I was younger, there was, language barrier. Culture definitely was a big one. There's just, I wasn't familiar with anything American, apple pie, even hamburgers, none of this, right? I'd seen it, you see it on TV, but I didn't have it. Learning to assimilate was difficult. We have kids now, and you recognize how important, being able to fit in is. And so, we didn't know how to fit in, and couldn't afford to fit in any of the material things that you need to fit in as a kid also. So we didn't have any of that. But we were kids, right? And we didn't know any better. And, I remember it being just a very fun childhood, but there were a lot of difficulties with discrimination and with kids being kids, and somebody who didn't look the same and who didn't sound the same. I think that there's all that you have to overcome. I see my wife now. My wife is red-blooded American from West Texas, right? And I see her struggle with that, right? A lot of times where she's like, oh, I'm concerned about William this or Eleanor that or Sam. And I think that my parents were lucky in that regard. They didn't have the luxury of being concerned with how we fit in at all, right? We're worried about trying to put food on the table. And so they weren't concerned about that. And I think that really helped us though, right? There wasn't anybody trying to hold our hand to help us, pave the way for us. I'm going to go find work and I'm going to try to feed you. You go to school and you do well. If they ever thought about it, they would have wished that they could have provided better and helped us to fit in better. But I don't think that they were concerned about it at that time, because they just had, we were still on this very bottom row of the hierarchy of needs, right? And so we were still struggling through that at that time.